All right, good morning, gang. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Let's see if anybody hops in. Today, I wanted to get on just to do some. I'm getting my basement completely remodeled and gutted and stuff like that. So, excuse the mess in the background. Um, I'm doing a Q&A for anybody and anybody. So, if you train for a full marathon, if you have cross country, if you're a cross country runner, you're a cross country coach, have other ideas, questions, I'm here to answer any question and every question you might have, or at the very least, point you in the right direction. So this is a Q&A for everyone. So welcome anybody and everybody who comes on. I'm happy to answer questions. I'll hang out for a while and see if anybody's around. Anybody hops in and has any questions. And again, no questions stupid. Your questions matter. I'm here to help. I'm here to help coaches. I'm here to help athletes. So welcome. Let me know you're in here too. See somebody's in. Let me know you're in the comments. Just say hi in the comments on the right bottom right here. And join the chat. And again, I'm here to answer any and all questions, no matter what event you're training for. Okay. Right now we're in the fall, so in the beginning of cross country season, we're also in fall marathon training, all different types of stuff. So whatever your questions might be, whether you're an athlete or a coach, I'm here to answer them. So, and I'm speaking from 2 decades plus experience as a coach and a former competitive runner. I'm also USATF certified coach as well. So there's no question I would not be willing to answer in terms of training. So, and if you've seen any of my videos, I've got 400 plus videos on here for you, training from half mile all the way up to the marathon, all different types of levels. So I'm happy to answer. I'm very, very happy to answer. So ask away. You come in, ask away. So just leave me some questions in the comments, and let's see what you got. Or if you want to join the conversation and join me on the screen, let me know, and I'll put the link. You know what I'll do? I'll actually put the link here. Here. If there's anybody link to join on video. Here we go. Anybody has any questions, if you like, put them in the comments, or if you want to join me on video and have a conversation, there's the link. Okay, I just put the link in the comments. You cut and paste that link. Hop on. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to help. So, and again, we'll talk about marathon training. Some folks are training. We got Berlin coming this weekend. Some folks are training for Chicago. Some folks are training for New York. We have cross country right now. We're kind of just a few weeks the country, so there's still a whole season ahead of you. Or if you have middle distance runners who are training for track and using cross country as a season to get fit, how do you do that? Right? That's another question. How do you test yourself? How do you know you're getting fit during cross country season when you're not running cross country races? Well, important questions. Important questions. So if you have them, hop on. Let me know. Okay. I think I might do the Q and A's a little bit more. If we get some people asking, we get some interest. I'll do this more often. But I want to, continue doing different types of live streams. And if you have any specific live streams you want me to do, so you can ask questions on, and I can answer them on the fly, or answer them live time, just let me know. No matter what it is, if you're training for the half mile, or 400, marathon, 10K, whatever it might be, cross country, training for a flat race, training for hilly races, training for a course that you're going to run multiple times. There's so many different questions that you can ask that I'm happy to answer. So we got a couple of folks in here. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Put them in the comments, gang. Put them in the comments. This one today is a Q&A. Okay, I want you to ask me questions, or use the link and hop on the screen with me, and we can have a talk, and I can answer them in person for you. Either one. Happy to do it. Please excuse the mess in the background, by the way, gang. I'm having my basement, my whole house. I'm putting an addition on my house. So the basement's being gutted and redone and everything. So please excuse the mess. But let's see. We got a couple folks in here now. So let's see what we got. If you're training for cross country right now, we're early. So hopefully, we're up to the goal volume you want to be. We're doing depends on what you're doing. I tend to like hills and threshold tempo type stuff early in the season, transitioning into combining threshold and race pace. So mid-season, and then more race pace or even faster race pace towards the latter season in 3 or 4 week blocks. So you have time to adapt, so you can transition from one phase to the next, right? Not every workout needs to be over distance or at distance. You train for 8K, you don't always need to do 8K worth of volume in a workout. So you can go over, you can go under. Depends on what you're doing. Depends on how you're structuring your training. Marathon too. Let's not forget to incorporate speed fartleks. Shorten like 1 minute hard, 1 minute easy, 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy, stuff like that. Speed fartleks into marathon training. It's a very, very important piece and underrated part of training to utilize, to take advantage of. So let's see, gang. Let's see. I'm going to hang out here. Hang out here, wait. Let's see if anybody has any questions. But stuff like that. Or if you have any other types of questions. How do you set your training groups up? How do you know you're training in the right training paces? All these things are important questions. They're all good conversation topics too. So how do you know you're training the right training pace? I would test your athletes at a mile, right? See what they run on the track. And you can use that mile to determine what their training paces might be for pretty much everything. That way it makes sure that you have folks that are training that they're training in the right training paces for them. They're not overdoing it or going too slow. They're training in the right zones for them. And if it is too easy, then I would test them at a mile again, because maybe they went out too fast last time for the mile and slow down and whatnot. So this is how coaching with the eye, or where coaching with the eye comes, is important, and not only with the stopwatch, right? So testing, and again, you can determine your training paces for easy runs, tempos, thresholds, steady runs, progression runs, intervals, 3K pace, 5K pace, 10K pace, everything. All are important components of a well-balanced training program. And doing the right paces is absolutely key. 3K pace and 5K pace is good VO2 max training, particularly for middle distance runners. So a good healthy diet of that, even if it's every other week, every 3 weeks, is a great way to get your middle distance runners fit in cross country. Threshold training, absolutely critical, important. Tempo training, absolutely critical. How do you build your tempo run to 20 to 25 minutes or 4 to 5 miles, right? I've got a video on that. It shows you how to build your tempo run from scratch, so you can get to the point where you can handle a longer continuous tempo run and it's not going to shred you, right? So that's critical. It's critical. So if you have questions about that, let me know. If you have questions about progression runs, let me know. If you have questions about speed work, let me know. Okay? We got a few people in here, so I want you to answer. I want you to engage, ask some questions. And like I said, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Okay? Answer whatever you want, whether you're an experienced coach or a beginner's coach or an athlete who just wants to know some basic stuff. Just ask. Just ask. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to help. So that's why I'm making myself available on the live streams to help you get a little bit better or a different perspective or better insight on stuff. The more you know, the better position you are to make good decisions for yourself or for your athletes if you're a coach, especially if you're a beginner's coach. You don't need to know like the master plan. There's no such thing, right? There's a magic workout. There's staple workouts. There's no such thing as a magic workout or a master plan or whatnot. You have to be able to. You got a 10K tomorrow. You need advice. Well, I would run easy today, Benedict. Always run the day before a race, even if it's a short 2 or 3 mile run. 10K. Have you ever run a 10K before, Benedict? Or have you run a 5K? Generally, the 10K is probably going to be about 15 seconds slower per mile than your 5K. That's good if you're fit enough. That's a good ballpark right now. So whatever you ran for a 5K, I would run about 15 seconds per mile or 20 seconds per mile slower. Start there and try to work your way towards either holding that pace or a little bit faster. But I would definitely run the day before any race or any hard workout. Always run easy the day before. Okay, to make sure your legs are in rhythm. Any ways to improve running form? Well, I mean, you can do some strength training, but a lot of stuff is functional. Arm swings, okay, with some dumbbells, holding on to dumbbells, okay. Doing well, Zip Leg, Dip Bag, how are you? Core, making sure your core is good, your strength, your abdominal area, your lower back, making sure you have a good flexibility routine, okay, making sure that you're able to. I have several. I have a baseball channel, Zip Bug, and I have a football channel. Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. I've got three channels: baseball, this running one, and football. I do, Zip Bag. So if you're a fan of any of those sports, feel free to subscribe to those channels and come and join the conversations. Have some fun. Should you do a light workout run before a long run to pre-fatigue the legs during the marathon segment? Not necessarily. I mean, depends on how you set up your training schedule, WZ. Like you can do the marathon itself, like let's just say I generally have a Tuesday, Friday schedule, workout wise, and then a long run on Saturday. But again, depending on what the workout is, you schedule the long run accordingly. And as you get closer to the marathon, the long run becomes the workout where you're starting to do stuff at marathon pace. You transition into a more aggressive long run and let that become part of the workout, if that makes sense. And does that make sense, WZ? You don't necessarily have to do a light workout. You could just do some short speed development before a long run. That's totally fine. It really depends on where in the season you're at and how much time you have to the marathon, WZ. Give me some more insight. I'm happy to answer. Ran a sub 145 half 2 weeks ago. Nice work. Nice work, Zip Bag. Good stuff. You won one down from your. What's your goal, Zip Bag? Houston Rockets. 1 month from your goal, 5K race. What should you be training look like? What are you doing now, Houston? Take a look at my 5K training programs, okay? I have 5K training programs from scratch for those that have never run a 5K before. It really depends on where you're at in terms of your 5K. Like, are you running already, Houston, or are you just going to start now and run a month before your 5K? These are important questions because then you can set up your training appropriately. What will be a realistic goal for the marathon? Sub 145? I mean, how much time are you giving yourself to train for the marathon, Zip Bag? Is the other question. I appreciate it, WZ. Thank you. Anytime. The goal is quality. The goal is quality. So that's why I want to make myself available now. I mean, I want to, as a coach, I want to give back as much as I possibly can to a sport that's been so great to me. Hesitate between sub 4 hours or 3:30. Well, I would shoot for sub 4 hours, but like a 145. Well, let's see here. Let me take a look. Let me do a quick calculation. Okay. Give me 1 second here. How, when you say sub 145, what do you mean? What do you mean sub 1? Did you run 144? Did you run 142? Did you run, or whatever? You average 40 miles a week and you ran at 1654. Okay, Houston. All right. So 40 miles a week, you're on 1654. If you're running a 5K in 4 weeks, okay, so you average 40 miles a week. What does your training look like? Give me an idea of what a week looks like, Houston, so I could give you a little bit more insight, a little bit more data. All right, so 140. Let's just say you ran 142. Let me put this in here. So based on a 142, which is 747 per mile, your equivalent marathon pace should be about 331. But if you've never run a marathon before, I mean, I would probably shoot for a 345, 345-ish or something like that. 142. I mean, it depends on your fitness. Does your fitness translate well? Are you doing long runs, right? What was your long run leading into the half marathon? These types of things are important too. So you have 2 months you're giving yourself. Well, what's your long run now, Zip Bag? What's your long run like? What was your long run heading into the half marathon? How long did you go? So And so 2 weeks ago, that's okay. So you should be recovered. You did 2 times 20 miles. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see here. Now you can 9 minute per mile pace. Well, let's see here. Let me plug in for you 3:45 for the marathon. 3:45 for the marathon is 8:35 per mile. That doesn't mean go out and run 20 miles at 8:35. Okay, for here, training easy. Yeah, so easy runs right now it's between 9 minutes and 9:30 and 10 minutes. Okay. About 9:30 and 10 minutes. So 8:35 per mile is 3:45 for the marathon. So you want to get to the point now where you can start incorporating marathon pace running within your long runs, your 20 miles. You probably want to get another maybe 2 20 milers in, maybe 3 if you're giving yourself 2 months. Thank you, Zibag. I appreciate that. I mean, the goal is, yeah, I mean, I'd love to get to I'm not a celebrity or I don't have a name recognition like some of the channels do. So that's probably one reason I don't have boatloads of subs. But my goal is to have better quality than the other channels, coaching wise. So I appreciate the kind words. So, a progression long run, you can start at 10 minutes and work your way down to 8:30 per mile or 8:35 per mile, which is marathon pace for that 20 miles. And you can obviously just do 5-mile segments faster or 10-mile segments. Like you could do 10 minutes to 9:15 for the first 10 miles and then 9:15 to 8:35 for the next 10 miles. Progression. You want to know what it feels like running marathon pace at the end of a long run and not only the beginning. If that makes sense. That's a good way of breaking down your long runs. Zip bag. And by the way, folks, I'm gonna be publishing 3 books. Okay, they're almost done. So one will be cross country, one will be track, all the events, and one will be road racing. So I will have every detail I've got on this channel and then some in my books. So if that's something you're interested in, you can highlight, you can refer to me, and you still have direct access to me here and my email. So if you have questions about the books, you can ask them. So and I'll answer them directly. So just as a heads up. So the books are coming soon. How to get rid of lower back. Well, I definitely want to make sure you have a good core workout. Make sure you have a good flexibility routine. I've got a flexibility routine video on this channel. I've got 2 actually. Exactly what it feels like you overstretch. I mean, I have needles in your lower back. So it's one of the things. I mean, there are multiple lower back stretches. I would also make sure your hamstrings and your calves are good because sometimes the sciatic nerve will shoot up into your lower back. So I would make sure you be doing active flexibility before running. So, what's my prediction for Stipe? I think John Jones will beat him. Miocic? Yeah, I like Stipe, but John Jones will beat him. John Jones is way too good. That's what it could be, Zip Bag. I mean, make sure you have a core functional routine that you do maybe once or twice a week to strengthen that area. Make sure you have a good flexibility routine so you're running, and make sure you're not running too much heel to toe because that's a lot of hard impact to your lower back. And make sure you're running midfoot, okay? Heel to toe is right, landing on a bone, shoots right up into your lower back. So be careful how you run. Okay, so your stride pattern, your cadence is absolutely very important, Zip Bag. So training for cross country, 15, girl, how are you? How many miles a week should I be running? If I'm racing you're racing 4 to 5 kilometers. How often are you racing? SH Gel. What's your name, by the way, side? So I'm not saying Schleblo or Sheljo. Like, what's your name? I like to be able to call you by your name, if that's all right. But I mean, right now you're 15 as a girl. What year are you in high school? You're a sophomore? Are you a sophomore? I mean, I wouldn't go any more than probably like 35 miles a week right now. As a sophomore, and you can essentially go like 30 as a freshman, 35 as a soph, 40 as a junior, 45 or something like that as as a senior. It varies per athlete what you can handle. And you're living in the UK. Okay. Okay. So how often do you race? Your equivalent of a sophomore. Okay, like 10th grade. So yeah, I mean, maybe 35 miles a week with a long run, 7 to 8 miles. Um, so you're running 4 to 5K per races. How often are you racing? Because the more you race, the less time you have to train. Like in American high school, sometimes people race twice a week, which is far too much in my opinion. And then you'll have folks running their best races way too soon. So, um, 4 to 5 kilometer races, that's good. That is good. Equivalent of a sophomore. Yeah, to me, I'd say about 35 miles a week. I'd say about that with a long run of 7 to 8 miles, something like. And if you get up to 40 miles a week, it's eventually, even if it's next year, a long run you can build up 10 miles. So your races start in October, and I'll hopefully be running every couple of weeks if you qualify. Okay, so every couple of weeks, which gives you, an opportunity to build up your long run, your volume, and your workouts in between. But I would stick around 35. I would not exceed 40 miles per week. You're welcome. My pleasure. Feel free to ask any other questions you want. What specific pace would you recommend during running a classic 3 times 5K workout for someone trying to break sub 3:30? Well, sub 3:30, 3:30 itself is 8 minutes per mile, right? Sub 3 hours, you're looking at like 6:52 per mile. So you start at marathon pace, that 3 times a 5K. And this is a workout that I've actually given to athletes. The first one's at marathon pace. The second one is maybe basically halfway between marathon pace and half marathon pace. And then the last one, if you can get to it, you do it at half marathon pace, or 2 at marathon pace and the last one at half marathon pace. But at the very least, you want to do them at least 2 of them at marathon pace and the last one faster. So 3 times a 5K, that's a pretty aggressive workout. You want to make sure you can handle mile repeats and 2 mile repeats before 5K workouts, before 5K repeats. But again, 5K is 5K pace. You're looking at 8 minutes for sub 3:30 per mile, and about 6:52, which is marathon pace for sub 3 hours, or 6:50 per mile. So you take about a 4-minute recovery in between each. What is the best VO2 max workout for a marathon? Yeah, you're not going to run 5K at 5K reps at. Yeah, so 800-meter reps are okay. VO2 max, and you can do VO2 max mile reps, which essentially is at 5K pace with a good recovery. Let's just say you're doing thousands. You do 6, let's say 6 times 1,000 meters at 5K pace with a 2-minute or 3-minute recovery, or 6 times 1,200 at VO2 max pace, or pace, which is 5K pace, with a 2:30 recovery, a 3-minute recovery, or 4 times or 5 times a mile at VO2 max, which is essentially about a minute faster, almost 50 seconds to a minute faster. So if you're running them, if your goal marathon pace is 8 minutes per mile, you're looking to run those mile repeats in about 7 to 7:10 per mile. Something like that's fast. Give yourself good recovery, 4 to 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah, so 800-meter reps are pretty solid. The way I look at the 800-meter reps, and I've done this with marathoners, if you're looking to run 3:30 for the marathon, then your half-mile reps should be at 3:30. If you're looking to run 3 minutes, your half-mile reps should be in 3. If you're looking to run 3 hours, your half-mile reps should be in 3 minutes. 2-minute recovery, and so on. And you start at 4, then you add 2 to go 6, then 8, then 10. If you can build up to 10 and a half-mile reps at that pace, then you're in good shape. You're in pretty good shape. That's a good complementary workout. But yeah, 3 times a 5K is an important workout, but it's not a VO2 max workout. That's more of a race-specific marathon pace transitioning towards half marathon pace workout, if that makes sense. Ashley, how are you? Question about base building. Been running all through the summer, 3 months, and you're redshirting this fall. Is there any harm in continuing to stay at peak mileage? Or should you taper? It depends on how, if you're what volume you're at now, Ash, and are you incorporating workouts? Since you're redshirting, I guess you're running college races. Um, you could stay at mileage, but give yourself a drop down, like every third or fourth week, drop the mileage down a little bit. So, like, give me an idea what type of mileage you at right now, Ash. And obviously, you could plug in two workouts, and you can even test yourself if you're not racing cross country races. You could test yourself in a way that prepares you for track. So, unrelated question: any tips on how to deal with severe anxiety and well, I would definitely anxiety, suicidal thought. I mean, suicidal. I would definitely talk to a healthcare specialist about suicidal thoughts, anxiety. A little bit of a different monster. Suicidal thoughts, and I hope you're not having that. I'm sorry if you are. I would definitely talk to a specialist, like a therapist or something like that. But anxiety, I mean, good breathing routine, a good stretching routine, yoga, um, making sure you can time management is an important piece too, right? Time management is important, and making sure that you can handle the work that you're giving to yourself or that's given to you each day, each week. So not biting off too much, you know, or not trying to put too much on your plate that you can't handle. And make sure you can handle whatever's in front of you, and make adjustments if you can't. It's okay to scale back. It's okay. Suicidal thoughts, I would definitely talk to a healthcare provider or something like that, or a therapist. It's all good. But yeah, I mean, sorry to hear it. I really am, Zipplug. Um, 65 a week, just a tempo run on Wednesdays and long runs on Saturdays. I mean, you can even alternate, Ash. You can alternate so that tempo's not, you're not doing a tempo every single week. You can alternate like tempo 1 week, threshold reps the following week, VO2 max reps the following week, and then cycle it 3 times. And then you go back to your tempo. Then threshold reps, then VO2 max reps. So as a way of throwing some variety into your training. If you're doing 65 in 6 days, so you're over 10 miles a day, and every third week, well, since you have a day off every week, every fourth week, drop down to maybe 50 to 55 for that week, and then come back up the following, and then come back up for 3 more weeks. But since you're taking Sundays off, you have a regular rest day plugged into the training. So I would maybe do a drop down week every fourth week, Ash. But just if you want to throw some variety, whatever your tempo run is, Ash, I would throw some threshold thousands 1 week, right? And then VO2 max the third week, and then repeat the cycle again. Your tempo and then threshold 1200s, and then VO2 max. And then when you go back to the cycle again, then you do your tempo and then threshold miles, and then VO2 max. It's a way of adding, checking your own fitness, checking the progression. Are you getting fitter? Are you getting better? And there are certain signs. It's not only running faster workouts. It's recovering better, being able to last longer in the threshold zone. So if you're doing thousands versus 12s versus miles, you're spending more time in the threshold zone. And if you're able to maintain the same pace, it's a sign of progress. So there are ways you can check your fitness without necessarily racing if you're redshirting. So does that answer your question, Ash? Hey, Sanjay, how are you? How you doing, Sanjay? What can I do for you? Hope you're all having a good weekend, by the way. Yes, indeed. Anybody else have any questions? Does running in elevated mountains really help? You mean in altitude? Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of cardiovascular benefits about running in altitude. Not only expanding lung capacity too, and especially there's benefits if you spend more time in altitude. And it doesn't even have to be mountains, but if you're living in altitude or training in altitude, there are a lot of benefits, especially if you come down to sea level for training or racing. So, but there are benefits, yeah. There are benefits to training at altitude. Now, if you're just going to the mountains at sea level, it's a different story. That's not necessarily considered altitude. Altitude is when you're up at like a mile or higher, um, above sea level. I mean, but running mountains, yeah, it's a great way of building leg strength, leg speed. So, what about hill repeats for the marathon? Hill repeats for the marathon are critical. They're a good idea. Anyway, right? Yeah, I've actually done videos on this. I mean, you can avoid running downhill routes, but if you're gonna run down, if you have no choice, you go perpendicular. Okay, meaning you lean into the downhill and you don't lean back. So many people try to slow down and they lean back and put stress on your Achilles, your lower back, and your knees. If you lean forward and let the momentum take you, it's a little bit more forgiving on the legs. So, but I mean, unfortunately, it's going to be downhills for every uphill for the most part. So, no, I didn't walk downhill. I would jog. I would just lean into the hill, okay, and maintain perpendicular. You may even jog down a little bit faster, but again, it's taking the stress off your joints if you lean into it. Okay, stay upright leaning into the downhill and don't lean back. If that makes sense, Sanjay. The hill repeats are absolutely critical for short races and marathons. It's a great way of building leg speed. Also a more forgiving way of developing progressing your endurance, building your leg speed, building your leg strength. So it's a great way of doing it. And you recover better a little bit too, especially if you're running on a soft surface. Absolutely, absolutely. Pleasure, Ash. My pleasure. What is the reasonable weekly mileage from training 3 times a week? 3 times a week for the marathon. That's a tough one, Sanjay. I wouldn't put any number on the weekly mileage if you're only running 3 days. If you can get to 4 days, then sure. But I wouldn't worry about the weekly mileage if you're only running 3 days a week. I would worry about the long run and maybe some type of workout, or even if it's a hill workout or something, and then a short recovery day. So, would it be beneficial to run strides uphills? Yes, WZ. I have my folks, and you look at my training programs. I do strides uphill once a week, early in the week, and then strides flat later on in the week. They complement each other. It's a great way of building leg speed and leg strength in a more gentle way with the strides uphills. Yeah. And they don't have to be super long. It could be 50 meters, 100 meters. That's it. Doesn't have to be super long. It doesn't have to be super steep either. It can be just a very gradual uphill. So, but yes, it's beneficial to run uphill strides. But if you do them, I would do them early in the week and complement them with flat strides later in the week. Never done threshold workouts for training before. That's just the pace between tempo. It's about 10 seconds per mile faster than whatever your tempo pace is. So if your tempo runs are at 7 minutes per mile, right? Your threshold reps are at about 650 per mile, broken down by whatever the pace is for kilometer, 1200, and mile repeats. It's about 10 seconds faster per mile with short recoveries. If you're doing threshold thousands, you take a 1 minute recovery. If you're doing threshold 1200s, you take a 75-second recovery. If you're doing threshold miles, you take a 90-second recovery. But it's about 10 seconds faster per mile if you can handle it with those recovery periods. There are short recovery periods, which keeps it at threshold. And it's still slower than race pace, significantly slower than race pace. No. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question, Ash? Threshold is a good complement to tempo running. They're both good to incorporate or alternate with each other. But again, it's completely up to you to decide. But I definitely, in my experience, coach, I found it to be very beneficial to have both of them. Yep. Any other questions, gang? Any other questions? I appreciate y'all coming on. If anybody hasn't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up too. Let me know you enjoyed the live stream and you'd like to do it again. Yeah. Good, Sanjay. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing 3 days a week, I wouldn't worry too much about volume. Just make sure you're getting your long run in, an easy day. So, Zelak too, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. With WZ, I'm coaching about 15 athletes. Got some middle distance runners, some people training for the marathon, um, cross country, people in altitude, people at sea level. So I have about 15 athletes, something like that. If you find them necessary, gels are okay. It's a way of um, getting you fuel every couple of miles for marathon training. Maybe every 5 miles or so, you can pop a gel. But it really depends on what your stomach and your digestion can handle. So you experiment with these things in long runs to see what you can handle. You run a 5K at 16:20. Um, Not necessarily. It's not 5K pacey. Like I'll tell you, hey, give me 1 second. 5K. I'll do these calculations for you right now. 5K. So your 5K pace is 5:15 per mile at 16:20. Now, when you're doing threshold, okay, your threshold is 5:40 per mile. 5:40 per mile. Okay, your tempo is basically 5:50 per mile. Um, it's not necessarily tied to 5K pace. Threshold is always slower than 5K pace. Okay, it's possible to go from sprinter to distance. I find this short intervals very easy going. Yeah, I mean you can, but you got to do. I mean, it's it's smart, I should say, to be gradual about it. Let yourself develop. Let yourself adapt to longer stuff. That's what you want to do. So tendonitis is a very it's branded into an I actually have videos on tendonitis too. So take a look at those. It's the inflammation of your particularly joints and your bones and stuff like that. And it's a I mean orthotics help with tendonitis, plantar fasciitis. Um, Make sure you have good shoes. Anti-inflammatories only as needed, icing and whatnot. There's certain things you could do. You're welcome, Ash. There's certain things you could do. Tendonitis is a very annoying injury to have. Thank you, Sanjay. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. So back to the 5K. If you're 15, Ashlayer, yeah. So your tempo's at 5:40 pace. No, excuse me. Your threshold's at 5:40 pace. Your tempos are at 5:50 pace. So that keeps you in line with the 16:20. Make sure you're not exceeding. Now 3K pace for you, Ash, is about 502 to 503 per mile. That's 3K pace. So if you're going to do 600s at 3K pace or something like that, you're going to do 502 to 503 per mile. And you don't exceed, 2.5 miles or 3 miles of stuff at 3K pace. So, yeah, it's it's gradual. If you want to go from sprinting to distance, you slowly build up your endurance, build up a long run, build up certain runs, get to the point where you can handle steady state running, and then you start to incorporate some other things. If you've been sprinter, you obviously been used to doing a lot of fast twitch muscle training and aerobic stuff. So this is a way of complementing it with some aerobic stuff over time. If you're 800-mile, predict the workouts, predict a sub 5-minute mile, but you're running a 5:20. What's your 800 now, Zilak? And again, you're let's see, for the mile, let's see, predict the workouts. So if you're running 16:20, your mile should be about 4:45. Now, are you doing mile type workouts? And again, having a balanced training program. So a good way of doing it is 10K pace or tempo pace And then one we could do 5K pace the following workout, then a 3K pace the following workout, then a mile pace the following workout, and then cycle it. You need to have a well balanced training program. You know what I mean? About a 215, 800. Okay. So that's the key. You want to have stuff at 3K pace, say like you want to have stuff at mile pace, and the right workouts too. Whether it be 3K, and again, you can. I just did this recently. How to build up the 3K pace workouts, how to build up mile pace workouts. So for here, you can do 600s, repeat 600s at 3K pace, or sets, or repeat 800s at 3K pace. You could do repeat 400s, even broken up into sets and then continuous. You could do like 2 sets of 3 1 week, and then 2 weeks later you do, right? And then 2 weeks after that, you do 2 sets of 4, and then you do 8 consecutive 2 weeks after that. Like, you can build yourself into mile pace workouts. You can do the same thing with 600s or 800s at 3K pace. You build yourself over time to get yourself used to handling stuff. And this is where people get mixed up sometimes. They think they could just go out and run 445 or whatever just because the 5K equivalent is that much. That's not the way it works. You have what it basically suggests, and I've learned this from Jack Daniels too, is that you have the capability of running a 445 mile, but you got to do the work behind it, or running a certain such and such 9:15 3K, but you have to have the work done behind it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Best 5K pace, Brandon. Let me do a calculation here. Let's see, 11:30, 11:20, 2 mile PB, 11:30, 2 miles. Let's see, your 11:30. That's a 5:45 mile pace. That says your 5K should be around 18:25 or something like that, Brandon. About 18:25, which is 5:56 per mile. But again, that doesn't mean you can go out tomorrow and do that. You might be able to, but that means you try do a few 5K workouts at that pace. Okay, but you want to make sure that too. And this is the thing. I've done this too. Like, you test yourself at a mile. If you're closer to your 3K and 5K PRs or equivalents than you are the shorter distances, that means you need to improve your speed. If you're closer to the 400 800 than you are 3K and 5K, that means you need to improve your endurance. So what the mile, testing yourself at a mile, gives you a lot of data, and it suggests on how you can modify your training and tweak your training based on what your training looks like now, and how to and get you to the point where you have a well-balanced training program. Okay, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Brandon? Does that make sense? Hope you found this helpful. What would be a good circuit strength training routine you recommend for junior middle distance athletes, Mike? I mean, everything from squats and shoulder presses, or squats and arm curls, functional, where you can incorporate upper body and lower body at the same time, or even a lunge with a medicine ball twist one way, lunge with a medicine ball twist the other way. A good way of involving your core and your lower body and your upper body. Those are good. You're welcome, Brandon. Those are good strength training things. Calf, obviously, calf raises, build your calf strength up. Push-ups. You can add a push-up with an arm, with a dumbbell row. Push-up with a dumbbell row. You're adding dynamics. You're adding some other stuff. Or a Spider-Man push-up. Okay, or push-up with a mountain climber. You're adding core to your push-ups. These are great circuit training workouts, Michael, for middle distance runners especially. But you want to make sure you have a good amount of lower body, upper body core strength that complement each other. So it allows you to have more balanced attack, but it also allows you to handle hard, aggressive middle distance workouts. Okay, does that make sense? Well, what is that? Like I just said, Zalak, right? So you should be able to run like you can run 520 mile, but your 5K, that tells you need to do more more endurance training. Like I said, if you're closer to the shorter races and further away from the longer races, that means you need to incorporate more tempo runs, more endurance, more long runs, more threshold training to help get you get your longer distance equivalent closer to where it should be. Does that make sense? That's why I do the mile time trial, because it tells you whether you need to work on the shorter stuff or it tells you when you need to work on the longer stuff and exactly what you need to do to get there. So this is where coaching with the eyes is just as important as coaching with the stopwatch. So, it's like if you run a 5:20 mile, let me tell you here. Let's plug the mile in here. Okay. The 5:20 mile. Let me plug in 1 mile here. All right. 5:20. Your equivalent 5K is 18:18, which is 5:53 pace. Equivalent 2 miles, 11:25, which is 5:42 pace. So these are the paces you want to be building towards. And if you're at 20 minutes for a 5K, that tells you need to work on your endurance. How do you do that? Well, you increase your long run, your volume gradually, not drastically, your threshold training, your tempo runs. That's why I do so many workouts. And that's why I do some workouts on how to build your tempo run to 20 minutes, but in pieces, because not everybody can handle 20 minutes of straight tempo running, right? That's why I've done it, building it in pieces over time, how to do it. Okay. You know what I mean? You're welcome, Zalak. So these are the types of things. These are the details that a lot of people overlook or don't understand. That's why I'm here. That's why I have, I give my email so that people have questions. You can ask me anytime you want. Or do these live streams, you can ask me these types of questions. So I'm glad I'm able to answer your questions. It gives you better understanding. You're welcome, Michael. Ankle sleeves effective at combating ankle injuries? Nah, not necessarily. I mean, ankle sleeves, I don't know. Supplement, just take vitamins, daily multivitamins, multiminerals. Just do a foot and ankle strengthening routine to strengthen your ankles, to help you with flurry on flat surfaces and non-flat surfaces. If you want me to do a foot and ankle strength video, I'll do that. Just let me know. I'll do that. So, does typical ibuprofen help as needed? Zip bag as needed, but it doesn't help with your performance. It'll help with pain, but it won't boost your performance. Ibuprofen's an over the counter. People at the high level, they use much more specific and scientifically designed drugs to boost their performance. Everything from blood doping and everything else they do way beyond what you can even think of. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But I will wrap this up in a minute too. And I'm glad I was able to help. When you do for tempo threshold paces of your mile equivalent are too harsh for me, you cut my distance to slow down. Well, you start with shorter reps and you build into the longer reps. Okay. Or what you can do is, again, tempo threshold pace. Yeah, you start with shorter reps. Start with tempo 400s with a short rest, then build to 600s, then build to 800s. Okay, then you build. You don't necessarily have to start with 1K down 1,000 meter reps. You could start with shorter stuff and build from there. Okay, or the tempo runs. Again, look at my video on how to build. I broke it up into pieces: 2 times 6 minutes tempo, and then 12 minutes, then 2 times 8 minutes, then 16 minutes, 2 times 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It can get you to the point where you can handle 20 minutes in 6 pieces, and you do it every couple of weeks, which gives you time to adapt if you're not used to those paces, right? And start with shorter threshold reps, shorter tempo reps. So that makes sense. See, like this is a way of doing it that makes it easy for you to adapt. And again, this is where I think a lot of folks may not understand. Like, just because you can't handle the equivalent stuff right now doesn't mean you can't do it. That just means you have to build towards it. And how do you do it in a way that's intelligent, but that stays within your talent level and your fitness level and your age and your experience that still allows you to get there? You know what I mean? This is why I'm doing this channel, why I'm doing my books, why I'm doing these types of videos, because I want you to get a better understanding. What percentage of VO2 max, 25 minutes of tempo? And not necessarily VO2 max. You're not going to be doing a tempo at like 5K pace. So um, tempo will be a certain percentage of VO2 max, but your appropriate tempo pace is whatever, you know, whatever the appropriate training pace is for the time. And again, let's not confuse VO2 max or tempo. Tempo is a longer continuous run, which is a slower pace than VO2 max pace. So you're welcome, Zip. Tempo is more closely to half marathon pace, and VO2 max is more closely to 5K pace. So it's a huge difference between the two. Huge difference between the two. Come from a sprint background. You have like a 51 400 and 215, and you think, exactly, Zalek. Exactly. And this is where you do, this is why you gradually build slowly over time. But if you have a 51 400, that's a good piece of data to build towards. Okay. And the 21500, you can get that better over time, and it's important. And then you can do some pay, like some steady state stuff. Like you can do repeat 200s, right? For you, if you have 51 and a 215, let's just say you do a repeat 232, which is 210 pace. Let that be your next progression for the 800. Gradually get better. You do repeat 200s at 31, 32, which is going to be relatively easy if you run a 51. You take a 90-second recovery, and you do 8 of them. And then you work your way down to 75-second recovery. Then you work your way down to 60-second recovery. And if you can do 31 to 32 with a 60-second recovery, that's a good workout. You can do 8 of them. You get to the point. That's a good way of getting your 800 down, and getting your mile down too. And then you could do similar stuff with 400s. Okay. And whatever the mile is, you go a little bit faster. If your mile is 520, you do 400 meter repeats at 510 pace over time, and you gradually build that. And before you know it, like your 800s coming down, your miles coming down, and you're maintaining your speed by as well. So, but again, a lot of folks who run, who are 400 mainly, have trouble with 800 in the mile. It takes a while. That's where you have to build your endurance. You've got to build gradually towards that type of stuff, and it takes time. It takes time. Tempo run is never at 5K pace. So tempo run is essentially at half marathon pace. If you ran a tempo run at 5K pace, you'd be basically racing a 5K again. So tempo runs are essentially at half marathon pace. So it's slower. So I'll give you an example. Here is, let's just say the 5K is at 552 per mile. I'm using this example here for a 520 miler. The tempo 5K pace is 552 per mile. Okay. Half marathon pace, 622 per mile. 30 seconds slower per mile than 5K pace. So 30 seconds slower per mile than 5K pace for tempo runs right now. 5K pace, you do 5K pace workouts. But if you want a continuously longer run, like 20, 25 minutes, building towards half marathon pace for that run. So hopefully that was helpful. But I thank you all for coming on. I'm going to let you all go and just let you enjoy your weekend. I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your questions. If you want me to do this a little bit more regularly, in case you have more questions, just let me know. Okay? And again, you have my email, blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. Just ask me questions or watch my videos. If you haven't watched the videos, just put questions in the comments. Okay? And I answer them there too. I always look at my comments. I wish I had more comments. Sprinter mileage never concerned. Yeah, I mean, you get to the point you don't need really high mileage, like you don't need really high mileage. So whatever you're at now, you just gradually increase. You just gradually increase little by little, and you stay there for about 3 weeks. Then you increase a little bit more, stay there for about 3 weeks, but you do not need really high mileage. Mm-mm. Whatever your starting point is now, you gradually build from that. So you don't need to go from 20 miles a week to 60. No, you don't need to. Not immediately. Hell no. So everything is gradually building off of what you're doing now, if that makes sense. So hope you found this helpful. Thank you for your questions. Have a great weekend, everybody. And again, blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com is my email. Don't hesitate to ask me questions. Send me as many emails as you want. I'll see you on the next live stream.